Well, good morning again, and welcome members, friends, and visitors to the Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. We come together as an intentional community, gathered around our mission to support each other's individual spiritual journeys and to inspire, inform, and support all who seek a more equal and just community. And we're pleased that you are all here with us this morning. I'm Nancy Holland, working with Connie Schroth this morning as your service leaders, and we're really pleased to welcome back our old friend, Reverend Greg Shute, who will share with us this morning some of his observations from a recent trip to Ireland. And as always, we're grateful to have Michael on the piano, John this morning in the rear of our tech team, Darlene and the other volunteers mentioned in your order of service who make this Sunday and every Sunday possible here. Thank you so much. Okay. Announcements this morning. In the lobby after service this morning, you'll see a table set up and they have packets of 10 Reclaim Our Vote postcards that are available for you to pick up and take home and write out 10 and mail them. There's information about how and when to mail them. An easy way to get involved in helping reach out and be sure that everyone votes this election. And this is from our Social Justice Committee that has been very active, as usual. And now, join us as we light the chalice. The words are up front this week because we didn't get them fit them into the order of service. So Connie will lead us and I will light.
We light this chalice as a symbol of the light with all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be within us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts.
And now please rise in body or spirit and sing hymn number 318 in the gray hymnal, We Would Be One.
Ourselves
I put a new wick in the chalice this morning. Seems to be giving us a little trouble. But- So I want to recognize this morning that we're only a few days away from Rosh Hashanah, which begins at sundown on October 2nd. It's the start of the Jewish New Year, considered the birthday of the universe. A festive time celebrated with lighting of candles, special meals and sweets, prayer services, the sounding of the shofar, the ram's head horn. This year, I'm sure it will be a difficult celebration, both for Jews around the world, the Palestinians, and so many other places in our world that are in conflict today. But today's service is about the hope of reconciliation. We've seen this possible with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa that was formed in the 1990s. The objectives there were to promote reconciliation and forgiveness among the perpetrators and the victims of apartheid and the people who had suffered human violations between the periods of 1960 and 1994. That conflict resulted in violence and human rights abuses from all sides, and no section of society escaped, as is so often true in conflicts. That committee dealt with the issues of identifying victims of human rights abuses, referring them to a separate commission for reparation and rehabilitation to restore their dignity and to assist with healing not only of the survivors, but their families and the community as a whole. The commission also examined applications for amnesty from prosecution for the crimes that had been committed. And in 2007, a similar commission was started in Canada. There was a large class action suit, and the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement was finalized in 2007. And I'm not sure I was aware of this until I was in Canada this year, and I saw there are a lot of efforts in that regard still going on. And one of the elements of that agreement was to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to facilitate, again, the reconciliation of former students from these Indian schools, their families, the communities at large, and all Canadians. In each of these cases, perpetrators and victims were brought together in recognition that the only way to a more peaceful future is by acknowledging the past, not denying it, and then moving forward in healing. And we can probably all feel the elephant in the room on that one. Today, Greg is going to share with us his experiences in Ireland of a similar note, and we're looking forward to that. And now we will move onward to acknowledgements of the heart, the time where we can share our joys, our concerns, our hurts, our hopes with each other. So please come forward if you have something to share, and I will light a candle for you.
So I don't know if I mentioned a while ago, my grandson was really having problems and was put in a psych hospital for 3 weeks. But when he got out, he stayed with us for a week. He went home, is doing very well, and just started at a new school for special needs kids. So it's really pretty exciting for him to have a new beginning.
I ask us to hold in your hearts a former member who used to sit just about right there, a neighbor of mine, and I spoke with her yesterday, and her husband, Eric, Dr. Eric Knox, who has probably walked every single road in this area, is now in a wheelchair and in hospice. And I ask you to hold them in your hearts.
Well, for those joys, concerns that were shared, mostly concerns, and those that we may still hold in our hearts, let us take a moment of silence. And now take an offering for the work of this church. As we care for each other today, may we care for this congregation, for this church, its missions and programs, for we are now the keepers of the flame. We are grateful for your gifts graciously given this morning. Thank you. And now Connie will lead us in a unison read or a responsive reading.
This is in your gray hymnal, number 577. It is possible to live in peace, and this is by Mohandas Gandhi. If someone with courage and vision can rise to lead in a nonviolent action, the winter of despair can, in the twinkling of an eye, be turned into the summer of hope. It is possible to live in peace. Nonviolence is not a garment to put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our being. It is possible. Nonviolence, which is a quality of the heart, cannot come by an appeal to the brain. It is a plant of slow growth, growing imperceptibly but surely. It is possible to live in peace. If a single person achieves the highest kind of love, it will be sufficient to neutralize the hate of millions. It is possible to live in peace. If we are to reach real peace in this world, and if we are to carry on a real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. It is possible to live in peace. The future depends on what we do in the present. It is possible to live in peace. Oh, I'm sorry. Reverend Shute. Sorry about that.
Good morning. Nice to see you this morning again. I'm actually tempted to apologize in advance. I hope I can get through this. I'm not sure I can. Mary and I had a wonderful opportunity to do a Rick Steves tour of Ireland. It's the first time we ever went on a guided tour. I've always been a little cynical about guided tours, 28 people, 14 days, X number of miles. But we picked that because the itinerary looked like, if you've probably seen Rick Steves on TV and stuff, and he's interested in interacting with people. It's not just going to look at things, but it's about experiencing the place. And so I went and I was looking for those 40 shades of green, and I was looking for Irish whiskey, and I was looking for, I'm not a Guinness fan, Mary is, but I like a good Irish lager, and I found a couple of very nice beers there. And we met some very nice people on the trip, both our guides and our local people that we met. And we had a lot of opportunity to be in some pubs, some local pubs, and listening to some outstanding music. So all in all, it was a wonderful trip, and I'm really, really pleased. There's a picture in your order of service. This is the one place in the world where you can see at the Derry or Londonderry if you live in if you live in Northern Ireland, Derry if you live in the Republic of Ireland, in the Guildhall. That display in the center is a Nobel Peace Prize to John Hume, who was the architect of the Good Friday Accords of 1998. And on the left is the Mahatma Gandhi Peace Prize. And on the right is the Nelson Mandela Peace Prize. This is the only person who received all three of these awards. And he did it because he could see a future for Northern Ireland and the entire island of Ireland in a new and a different way. And he struggled mightily to bring it about. 1998 is 4 years after the first democratic elections in South Africa. And I can't help but think that Nelson Mandela, as well as Gandhi, and all these other peace-loving people who can see a future which is different, have been influenced by that. We traveled clockwise, leaving from Dublin, going all the way around and ending up in Belfast. And so we spent the first 12 days in the Republic of Ireland. And it was just a delightful, joyful, wonderful place to be. We met wonderful people. And we didn't really spend a lot of time on Irish history. They made it very clear that Ireland was conquered by the English, Henry II, in the 13th century, and years of struggle after that. Under Queen Elizabeth I, the Scotch-Irish plantations in Ulster, and the movement towards the penal laws, which took away voting rights and land ownership from the Catholics, and really set up a class or a caste system, even up to the potato famine. An interesting statistic I didn't realize, in 1845, there were 8.5 million people on the island of Ireland. And in 1850, there were 3.5 million. That's 5 million decrease in population, half of who died and the other half emigrated. And the Irish people love to talk about the Irish population of the world. There are far more Irish people not in Ireland than there. And I know on March 17th, we're all Irish, so it's a very true comment. But the total population of the island currently, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, as you know, is only 8 million. So it's never even gone back up to what it was in 1845. It's a very poor place. There's not a lot of industry. It doesn't do very well for agriculture. Their main industry is currently tourism. So go and spend money. But it was a fun time. It was a great time. I enjoyed it. And then we got to Derry. And our guides had said, when we get to Northern Ireland, things are going to be a little different. Be careful what you say. We don't like to dwell too much about the troubles, but it's a reality. And it's a reality that we're only now beginning to face. And we went along and we went down to the Falls Road, and the walls that used to separate the neighborhoods, these giant 20-foot cinder block walls, and with iron gates at the roads. And there's one there, it's called the Peace Wall, and it's all been written on, all kinds of things, and we got to write there and touch it. Very emotional sort of memento to the Troubles, which were 1969 to 1998, almost 30 years. And I know we all remember the bombings and the atrocities both in Ireland and in London and in England. And it just seemed that there was always something coming up every day. And to walk along this wall, and which they have kept as a symbol of the division between, in Northern Ireland, the division between two sects, the IRA and the provisional government supporters. And they tried to make it very clear that it's not about a religious background. It comes out of a religious generalization and identification. But the argument was never theological. It was always economic and political. And it was defined by the haves and the have-nots. And the haves and the have-nots were defined by the people that were being oppressed and the people that had the power to oppress. But it was never theological. So that's an issue that has been, that the people of Ireland, both the Republic and Northern, have been reluctant to address, because they can make an excuse when it's Protestant and Catholic, but you can't make an excuse when it's humanitarian. And I think that's one of the things that John Hume recognized, that this is not about religion, it's not about theology, it's about basic human rights. And he struggled mightily to get people to the table from both sides to address it as human beings rather than as a religious affiliation. But the interesting thing, one of the points that was made, is there's this massive wall that still exists along the Falls Road. It's one of 50. All of the neighborhoods in Belfast were isolated as of curfew at night. The gates closed and you could not leave your neighborhood. And they had military patrols. A lot of our guards talked about when they were kids and when they went from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland, they got frisked. So you go to visit your cousin or somebody who lives across the border, and you had to go through a military checkpoint, like Checkpoint Charlie was. And the idea of the separation of populations was so ingrained, and it was so necessary because of the violence, that it became normative, to the point where one of our guys was talking about that even after the Accord, as late as 2005, went into a store and immediately put their hands up to be frisked. And they go, oh, that's right, I don't have to do that anymore. The interesting thing, of course, is that now, when you drive from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland, there's no border. The lines along the side of the road are white, and then they turn to yellow. and you have to no longer spend your euros, you have to start spending pounds. But other than that, you wouldn't know the difference. It's a soft border, whereas it used to be a military border. So this is an amazing accomplishment. And the thing that they learned is a couple of well, the Good Friday Accords. Oh, it gets so complicated. Those glasses and these glasses. Oh, I want to go back to the Troubles. One of the things that they understood was, or they came to understand, which ones are these? These is that the Troubles weren't from 1969 to 1998. The Troubles were from 1921 to 1998. I didn't realize there's a thing called the Irish Civil War. You know the Irish Civil War? No, neither did I. Well, in 1921, well, we know about the Easter uprising in 1916. And eventually in 1921, the English Parliament decided that home rule for Ireland was coming. So they said, okay, we're going to give Ireland home rule. However, we're going to hang on to Northern Ireland. So the partition came through in 1921. And at that time, there were two groups. There was the treaty group and the anti-treaty group. The treaty group said, yes, sign this. And Michael Collins, who was the commander-in-chief and the president, he said, I know it's not freedom for the whole island, but it's the first step. Let us take this and let's do this. And the IRA, which was the anti-treaty, said, no, it's not enough. We will continue to fight. And so for about a year, it went back and forth, and then they eventually had a plebiscite, and the people of Ireland voted for or against the treaty. And it barely passed, but the treaty essentially partitioned Northern Ireland from the Republic of Ireland, and it established home rule for the Republic, although it was still part of the Commonwealth, and they still had to pledge allegiance to the king, which really grated a lot of people in Ireland. So they had a civil war. And actually in 1922, Michael Collins was assassinated. He was the president of the Republic of Ireland. He was 32 years old. And the IRA said, we did it, and we will continue to fight this partition. So although the Troubles really peaked between 69 and 98, there was always serious friction between Northern and Southern Ireland. And so part of it was, this was not a new issue. This was an ingrained for generations issue. And it became so problematic because nobody could find a way to leave it all behind. And although they never called it truth and reconciliation, what they eventually did was decided to tell the truth. And what they did was, in the provisions for the Good Friday Agreement, was the first thing that they did was to establish a North Ireland Assembly. So there would be home rule for Northern Ireland. And the second thing, that people in Northern Ireland have the opportunity for dual citizenship. They can be part of the United Kingdom, or they can be part of the Republic of Ireland. The third thing that they did was they had to dispose of all arms. And there's a public garden in Belfast, well, no, it's in Derry, where it's a public park, and they excavated and they dug out this huge trench, and they invited everybody to bring the guns and deposit them, and they buried them. And there's a memorial over it that says, "This is our past, not our future." Yeah. And they released people who were in prison as part of the, not as terrorists, but as people from the self-identified as soldiers of the revolution, which a lot of people that had family and friends of victims of that had a hard time with that. Let me come back to that. And they had to scale back the military. They withdrew. At one point, the British, they had over 50,000 British troops in Northern Ireland. And they had to tell the truth about what they call the disappeared. There were a lot of people in Northern Ireland, I don't know where they went. They just one day were no longer there. And so that, like in South Africa, they had to identify and bring some closure to some of these. But the thing about the prison and the release was, I mean, and this is the beautiful thing about truth and reconciliation. The genius is that there's a desire no longer to perpetuate the abuse. We're not going to continue to be this way. Not only do the oppressors have to give it up, but the victims have to give up being the victims. That's also a very hard thing to do. One of the things that they talk about in South Africa, the greatest generation, are the people who have to forego punitive damages, for all the people who oppressed in South Africa. How do you do that? How do you let go of the anger, the frustration, all the emotion that comes with being exploited and oppressed? That gets to the other picture that is in your order of service. That's King Charles in 2015. Then it was Prince Charles. And he's shaking hands with the leader of the IRA, who in 1979 put a price on his godfather's head, Lord Mountbatten, who in 1979 was blown up on a fishing trip with his grandson. Lord Mountbatten was Prince Charles' godfather. How do you shake hands with the man that ordered that? How do you get there? And the other thing, there's a long article in there that came from a campus newsletter at Notre Dame after Queen Elizabeth's passing. I'd let you take that home and read it. She visited Ireland. She went to Dublin in 2011. The first monarch to visit since her grandfather over 100 years ago. And the article talks about her going to the Garden of Remembrance, where everyone who ever fought for Irish independence over 700 years is listed and remembered there. And when the Queen first came to Ireland, she was received with mixed reviews, to say the least. And the day that she went to the garden with the president of the Republic, a woman named McInnes, there was a big demonstration 2 blocks over, and they were making big disturbance and making a lot of noise. And I love this article, and I included it in there because the Queen's bowing, putting a wreath at the Garden of Remembrance, and standing there in silence speaks volumes more than the demonstrators 2 blocks over. How do you get there? How do you get to a place where you can be that open, that willing? I don't know the answer to that. The other thing in the Good Friday Accords that I skipped over, there's a section in there that says there will be a plebiscite. There will be a referendum, date yet to be decided, for the reunification of Ireland. The people we talked with said, that's the first step. It acknowledges that there is a possibility and that there is a way to move forward to reunification. A couple of people said they hope it doesn't happen for another 30 or 40 years because they are concerned that there's too much anger still and too much resentment. I disagree because I think that the whole notion of truth and reconciliation is a challenge to that, which makes it even more pressing for a sooner referendum rather than a later one. Because if we wait until we have forgotten, then it doesn't mean that there's a change. Whereas if we can change our thinking now and move forward, then that is a more significant step and it promises more for the future. So the point I'm getting to is that great whiskey, great beer, great music, but I'm reminded of what's possible when people can think in a new way about a new vision, about a new way of being people. And recognizing that it takes each and every one of us to change our own way of thinking. And that it often takes people unknown, like John Hume, who nobody knew, but he decided he was going to change the world, and he did. So essentially, that's my message. So I would like to go into our conversation now rather than after the music. As I've been speaking, you've been hopefully thinking, and some thoughts about where this goes. I don't want to necessarily suggest this is the solution to the Middle East or it's the solution to anything else, because what it requires is somebody that has the stature and the vision that can move forward with this. And I don't know that we see anybody like that right now, but it could be right here in this room and start here. It could. Comments?
Yes, Greg. I was in Northern Ireland twice. I dropped in with my family and to see Mary. She had bed and breakfast, and she was very kind to us. And we went back again, and she was so happy that her grandson asked her, "What's a Protestant?" It meant nothing to him. The division that came forward. And with all these things that's happening in the world, the differences in religion and so forth, I think we should always add one thing: be kind. If we could just do that, be kind.
I have a mic too, if anybody has.
Right here in the United States, we have also had a revolution. It was called the Civil War. And this is the longest time this church has ever been without a black member, and I'm sad about that.
Well, one of speaking of the civil wars, one of the things that one person we were talking with said that it's only been recently where they're teaching in their school system about the Irish Civil War. They didn't talk about it. They didn't talk about it for whatever that would be, 50 years, because it hurt so bad. And the whole idea that their whole community could be so split over treaty and anti-treaty and to create such violence, they didn't want to talk about it. And so I think that this whole notion of truth and reconciliation, the first thing is, once you begin to acknowledge the truth about not 30 years, but 80 years of antagonism, is when you can begin to find a resolution, because before that, you're just playing with blinders on. And so they're now teaching the history of the Irish Civil War in their schools. And what if everywhere we began to be more demanding of truth and more accepting and reconciling about that truth?
Woke and anti-woke.
Stop banning books. First thing my mother taught me was I could read anything I wanted to read, no matter what the book was. She would have nothing to say, and I read some really wild books, but it should be a right. Any book should be published and sacred.
Well, the point behind that, of course, I think, is when you've got one group of people who feel superior in terms of their value system, that then they have the right to inflict it on other people because other people are so erroneous, you know. So, yeah, I have to take care of you because you're incompetent. I said that facetiously, folks. Don't misquote me on that. But I think that's the attitude, you know, that, Big Brother needs to take care of you. I'm trying to think, there was something that came through on my Google headlines the other day about banning banned books, and it said something like, do you ever remember a time when people who didn't burn books were celebrated? Something like that.
Yeah, it makes me think of possibly Spain. I don't really know the history of Spain that well, but I know that they've been through a similar situation. And I'm much more familiar with El Salvador. And the dynamics was certainly quite a bit different, but there has been a truth and reconciliation in that country. And one thing, in the entertainment field, it's either Hulu or Netflix, I forget, but there's a wonderful little series called Dairy Girls. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but it's about a Catholic girls' school in Derry during the Troubles, the later years of the Troubles. And it's very humanizing, I would say.
We heard about it, and I know it's out there, but I don't subscribe to those fancy TV stations. But one of the points was made, and I forgot the name of the program, but there was a program started I think before the Good Friday Accords, where volunteer young boys volunteered, or their families volunteered them from both Protestants and Catholics, that sent them here to the United States. Does this sound vaguely familiar? They sent them here to the United States to host families, and you had a Catholic boy and a Protestant boy living with an American couple going to school for some extended amount of time. And then they went back to Ireland, and they understood that you could be friends with this other person who had been considered, you know, I'm getting some nods, so I didn't make it up. But I don't know, you know, I'm not supposing that I can offer any kinds of solutions.
I guess my question is, will this last? You have this hundreds years of animosity. Will this peaceful feeling last? I look at South Africa and it seems like that feeling is going away.
That's true. South Africa right now is going through a lot of problems, absolutely. And I'm not suggesting that everything is easy. There's a peace bridge in Derry. It's a beautiful piece of architecture that goes across the river, whatever it is. But it goes like this across the river. And there's this angular supports that stick up. It's the ugliest thing you ever saw in your life. And there's a big plaque right in front of it that says, "This is the peace bridge reminding us that the road to peace is never easy." It's a fascinating place. But you asked that question, and so I'll tell you what I think of that. We were standing, I don't have many pictures, my wife takes all the pictures, but we were standing waiting for a light change at an intersection. In front of a pub, and I just happened to turn around and I took a picture of a poster in the window. Since we last met, spring has turned to summer, autumn has been and gone, and winter is now upon us. Before this is over, we will have weathered 4 seasons without the warmth of your laughter, the stomp of your feet, and the beat of your heart, and the strength of your song. But this city has weathered greater troubles with a capital T than this. Belfast will bounce back, brighter, stronger, better, for we are all forever changed, in many ways for the better. We will emerge from this renewed, having learned much about ourselves and this place we call home, because we believe. We believe there are better days ahead. We believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. And most of all, we believe in Belfast. Its unbreakable spirit sets this city and its people apart. So keep your eyes on the horizon. Keep looking for that rainbow. We will meet and draw close when the brighter days break through again. And it will be worth it. It's just in a window. So yes, I do believe it will last because people have changed. It isn't an edict from the top down. It comes from the bottom up, from people being tired of the violence, tired of the exploitation, and tired of the anger. And they want to be different. And that's the difference.
So yes, there is South Africa, and yes, there is Ireland, and yes, there are the American Indians. As Nancy mentioned, there's the elephant in the room, big time here in this country, as far as reconciliation goes. And the only help and answer I can come to is more meetings like this, more UUs, more open minds, more congregations discussing such things. 'Cause, who knows what's to come when that gets faced.
We're not going there. We're not going there. But let me just say, I had for years a saying in my office, and I know I've said this before, May Sarton's words of wisdom. We convert, if we ever do, not by demanding the impossible, but by being irresistible. I invite you to be irresistible. So we're going to do a closing song, right?
We are, yes. Again, okay. We'll build a land. Number 121 in your gray hymnal. With verve, please. We'll build a land. We'll build a land where the peoples are free. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land where sisters and brothers anointed by and create peace, where justice shall rule down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings, all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers anointed by God may and create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll building up ancient cities, raising stations from old, restoring ruins, generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a land where sisters and brothers anointed by God may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like ghosts of righteousness and her people. Oh, come build a land, my people we seek. Come build a land where sisters and brothers anointed by God may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Just in closing, words from those who have fought for peace. We must develop and maintain that capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. from Martin Luther King Jr. And from Nelson Mandela, forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. That is why it's such a powerful weapon. And now, let's extinguish the flame. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Oh, lifted up, love bless your way. Moonlight, starlight, guide your journey to peace and the brightness of day.
Piece that I was originally planning to play for the postlude, it seems to pale in comparison to the sermon and the discussion that I'll have to do a reprise of what I played earlier this fall. It's a big one for me.
Please join us for coffee and conversation in the lobby. Go forth and have a wonderful week, remembering that love is in the center of everything. Blessed be.